Lena had always lived a quiet and simple life. She never tried to stand out, and she never asked for much from the world. Most people who passed her on the street barely noticed her. She dressed plainly, worked small jobs here and there, and moved through her days as if she wanted to take up as little space as possible. To many, she looked like an ordinary woman trying to get by, and that was exactly how she preferred it. She woke up early every morning, made a cup of tea, and walked to whatever job she had that week. Sometimes she helped clean offices. Sometimes she worked at a small cafe, wiping tables and stacking chairs. She never complained, even when the days were long. She simply did what she had to do. Even though she lived simply, Lena was not unhappy. She was used to silence and routine. She found comfort in it. But inside her, there was a kind of quiet sadness. It wasn't sharp or loud. It was more like a memory she didn't want to touch, something she kept locked away. Whenever she walked past anything related to music, a poster about a concert, a music shop window with instruments, her eyes would look away quickly, as if she didn't want anyone to see her reaction. The feeling passed fast, but it was real. She carried a past she never spoke about, and no one around her knew it even existed. One day, Lena decided to do something different. She had seen a flyer about a community learning center nearby. It offered basic classes for adults, reading, writing, computer skills, language lessons, and other simple courses. She had been thinking for a while that she should learn more. Maybe if she improved her skills, she could find a better job. The flyer mentioned that anyone could join, and that classes were affordable. After staring at the paper for a few days, she finally told herself, why not? She packed her small bag and walked to the center dot. The building wasn't fancy. It looked like an old school that had been used for many years. The walls were a little faded, and the windows were dusty, but there was energy inside. People were walking through the hallways, talking and laughing. Some were young, some older. The place felt alive, and Lena felt a little nervous walking in. She wasn't used to being around groups of people. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. At the front desk sat a cheerful receptionist who welcomed her with a big smile. "How can I help you?" she asked. Lena spoke softly, almost shyly, explaining that she wanted to join one of the basic classes. The receptionist handed her a form and pointed her toward a bench. As she sat down to fill out the papers, she could hear music coming from down the hall. It was faint, but she recognized the sound immediately. A piano. She froze for a moment, her hand still holding the pen. Her heart seemed to pause. The sound brought back memories she didn't want to remember. She forced herself to look away from the direction of the music room and focused on finishing the form. While she waited to return the paper, a group of teachers walked by chatting about an event that the center was planning. They seemed excited but stressed. One of them said they needed participants for a performance, but their students weren't ready. They passed Lena without really looking at her. She was just another quiet face in the hallway, sitting alone, minding her own business. None of them had any idea who she really was. To them, she was simply another beginner looking to learn something basic. After handing in her form, Lena was told she could start classes the following week. She thanked the receptionist and turned to leave. As she walked back through the hallway, she passed a room with the door slightly open. Inside, she saw a grand piano sitting in the center like a great silent animal. A student was sitting in front of it, struggling to play a few notes. The teacher beside him looked frustrated and tired. Without thinking, Lena slowed down. Her eyes rested on the piano. For a second, she forgot where she was. Her breath caught in her chest. She hadn't seen a piano this close in years. She quickly looked away and kept walking, but her heart was still racing. It didn't make sense to her. She had left that world behind long ago. She had promised herself she would never go back to it. Music had once been her entire life. It had been everything she knew. But life had taken her in another direction, one filled with hardship, pressure, and pain she didn't want to relive. She had chosen silence over sound. She had chosen peace over passion. Or at least she tried to dot when she stepped outside. The cold air hit her face, but it didn't calm her. She walked home slowly, lost in thought. The memory of the piano in that room clung to her like a shadow. She remembered long days practicing, long nights filled with music, and moments when her fingers moved across the keys like they were part of her body. She remembered applause, excitement, and dreams. But she also remembered the loneliness, the pressure, and the moment she walked away. She shook her head as if she could push the memories out. That was not her life anymore, Dot at home. She made herself dinner, just a simple meal, and sat by the window while she ate. The city lights flickered in the distance. She thought about the learning center. She hoped the class would help her move forward in a new direction, one that had nothing to do with what she had left behind. She reminded herself that she was just a woman trying to learn something new. Nothing more. Nothing less. The next few days passed quietly. Lena prepared for her first class, bought a small notebook, and tried not to think about the music she had heard in the hallway. But the sound had stirred something inside her. When she lay in bed at night, she could almost hear the echo of a piano. She tried to ignore it, but her mind kept drifting back to it. She wondered if she was being childish. It was just a sound, just a memory. It meant nothing now. On the morning of her first day, she dressed neatly and tied her hair back. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked ordinary, just as she always had. No one would ever guess she once lived a life far different from this one. She picked up her bag and headed out the door. When she arrived at the learning center, the halls were buzzing again. She found her classroom, took a seat in the back, and listened quietly as the teacher introduced the course. The class was small, friendly, and relaxed. Lena felt comfortable for the first time in a long while. She took notes carefully, paying attention to every word. She wanted to do well. She wanted to improve her life, even if just a little. During a short break, she stepped outside the classroom to get some fresh air. As she stood in the hallway, she heard music again. This time, it was louder. Someone was playing the piano clumsy, uneven notes, like a student practicing something too difficult. She swallowed hard. Her feet moved before her mind did. She walked toward the sound and stopped outside the music room door. Inside, a teacher stood in front of a group of students, trying to motivate them. He looked stressed and tired. He was explaining that the center was hosting an event soon, and they needed someone to perform a piece of classical music. The students looked nervous and unsure. Some shook their heads. Others stared at the floor. The teacher rubbed his temples, clearly frustrated. Lena stepped back, trying not to be seen. She didn't want to draw attention. She had nothing to do with that world anymore. She turned to walk away, but before she could leave, the teacher glanced up and saw her. He smiled politely, thinking she was just passing by. He had no idea who she was or what she once could do. To him, she looked like a simple woman who was probably taking a basic class. Nothing more. Lena nodded politely and hurried back to her classroom, trying to shake the feeling in her chest. She didn't want anyone to notice her. She didn't want to be pulled into anything. But the universe has a way of stirring the things we try hardest to bury. The day ended, and Lena walked home again. She told herself that she was fine, that everything was normal. But deep down, she knew that something had shifted. She didn't know why, and she didn't know what it meant. All she knew was that the sound of that piano had awakened a part of her heart she thought was gone forever. She tried to sleep that night, but her mind kept drifting to the learning center, to the piano waiting silently in that room. She didn't know that her quiet life was about to change. She didn't know that the teachers would soon push her into a situation she never asked for. She didn't know that her hidden talent, her secret past, was on the edge of being discovered. For now, she only knew one thing, no matter how much she tried to live simply. The music inside her wasn't ready to stay silent forever. Lena arrived at the Community Learning Center the next morning, still carrying the quiet unease that had settled in her chest the day before. She tried to convince herself it was nothing. It was just a piano. It was just a sound. Nothing in her life would ever return to what it had been. She held her bag close as she stepped inside the building, pretending the nervous flutter in her stomach wasn't there. The hallways were alive with chatter. Students hurried to classes, teachers moved briskly between rooms, and the faint smell of cleaning supplies mixed with the aroma of coffee from the small break area. Lena walked slowly, keeping her eyes straight ahead. She wanted to blend in, to be unnoticed. She had spent years learning how to do that, how to move through the world without drawing attention. As she turned the corner, she heard the familiar sound of the piano again. It was louder this time, echoing down the hallway like it was trying to find her. Lena froze, her hand gripping the strap of her bag a little tighter. She felt an old familiar pull in her chest, a mixture of longing and fear. Memories she had buried came rushing back, the long hours of practice, the applause, the weight of expectations. She quickly looked away and continued toward her classroom. The class she attended that morning was small and friendly. The teacher greeted her warmly, and the students introduced themselves. Everyone seemed kind and welcoming, and for a while, Lena felt at ease. She focused on the lessons, wrote notes carefully, and even laughed a little when a student made a joke. But even amid the laughter, her mind wandered back to the music room. She wondered who was playing, and why it sounded so familiar, so effortless. During a short break, the teacher called the class together for a quick announcement. The community center was hosting a small event in a week, a showcase, where students could demonstrate what they had learned. The teacher explained that each student would have a chance to perform something in front of a small audience, and he encouraged everyone to participate. Some students cheered, excited at the opportunity. Others looked nervous and uncertain, fidgeting in their seats. Lena's heart sank a little. She had no desire to perform. She had come here to learn, to quietly improve herself. She did not want to be in front of an audience, and the thought of performing made her stomach twist. She reminded herself silently that she could simply decline if asked. Later that day, as Lena walked back through the hallways, she overheard the music teachers discussing the upcoming event. Their voices were raised in frustration, and she caught snippets of their conversation. "We need someone to play for the showcase. None of our students are ready yet," one teacher said, shaking his head. "I know, but we can't cancel. The audience is coming, and we need at least one performance," another replied. Lena continued walking, trying to ignore them. She had no interest in getting involved. She had done her best to avoid the world she had left behind, and she intended to keep it that way. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. One of the teachers, noticing her walking by, called out, "Hey, you there?" Lena froze. All eyes were suddenly on her. Her heart jumped into her throat. She turned slowly, unsure if they were speaking to her. "Would you like to perform at our showcase?" The teacher asked, smiling as if it were a casual invitation. Lena blinked. She shook her head quickly. I'm not ready," she stammered. "I don't play publicly." The teacher waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, don't worry about that. It's just a small event. Even a few notes will be fine. Come on, it will be fun." Lena felt a cold wave of panic. She wanted to protest, to explain that she couldn't, that she didn't want to, that she had no idea what they were expecting. But before she could say anything further, one of the other teachers chimed in. Actually, she's perfect. Quiet, unassuming. No one will expect much from her. It'll be entertaining. Lena's stomach twisted. Entertaining? That word made her heart pound. They weren't asking her to perform. They were expecting her to fail. They were expecting to laugh. I really can't, she began, but the first teacher interrupted, patting her shoulder. Nonsense. Just come and try. What's the worst that could happen? Lena wanted to vanish. She wished she could sink into the floor and disappear completely. She thought of turning around and running, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. She could feel the teacher's eyes on her, expectant, impatient. A crowd of students had gathered around, curious about the commotion. The teachers didn't know her story. They didn't know that she had spent years playing piano, that her fingers had once danced across keys with unmatched skill, that she had been trained under some of the most demanding instructors. To them, she was just a quiet woman with no background in music. They assumed she was harmless, inexperienced, and perfect for their little joke. Lena swallowed hard. Her mind raced. She could refuse, but they might push her. She could play and risk revealing herself, but the thought of performing, of standing under their expectations, filled her with dread. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her shaking hands. Finally, she nodded, not because she wanted to, but because she knew arguing further would only make things worse. The teachers beamed, assuming she was agreeing to a harmless little attempt. Wonderful. One exclaimed, "Come with us to the music room. Let's see what you can do." Lena followed, her steps slow and deliberate. She kept her eyes lowered, hoping no one would notice the tension in her hands, the rapid beat of her heart. She felt exposed, as if everyone could see the storm building inside her. The music room door loomed ahead, and she knew that once she stepped inside, there would be no turning back. As they entered, the room seemed larger than it had before. The piano sat in the center, polished and gleaming. Its presence was commanding, almost intimidating. Students and a couple of teachers gathered around, expecting to witness something amusing. They were smiling, whispering to each other, anticipating a performance that would likely be clumsy or comical. Lena stood at the edge of the room, her eyes fixed on the piano keys. Memories surfaced, the feel of the keys beneath her fingers, the sound of music filling halls, the long nights of practice, the thrill of mastering a piece she had thought impossible. Her fingers twitched almost unconsciously, aching to move, to play, to create the music that had been trapped inside her for so long. The teacher gestured toward the piano. "Go on, try it. Play whatever you can manage." Lena nodded slightly, walked to the bench, and sat down. She placed her hands over the keys, feeling the familiar weight of the piano beneath her fingertips. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking a shaky breath. The room was silent, all eyes on her. She could feel the anticipation, the expectation, and the curiosity. In that moment, a strange calm washed over her. She realized that while she had tried to leave this part of herself behind, it had never truly gone. The music was still inside her, waiting. She could no longer ignore it. The teachers expected a simple, awkward attempt. They thought they were watching a quiet woman with no skill. What they didn't know was that they were about to witness something entirely different, something they could never have imagined. Lena pressed the first key, slowly at first, testing herself. Then, almost without thinking, her fingers began to move with confidence and precision. Notes that had been dormant for years poured out seamlessly, filling the room with a melody so pure and intricate that it silenced the whispers immediately. The students stared, wide-eyed. The teachers froze, their jaws slightly open in disbelief. No one had expected this. The quiet, ordinary woman sitting at the piano was performing a piece far beyond their comprehension. Each note measured and expressive. Lena played, not for the audience, not for approval, but because it was the only thing that felt right. The music carried all the years of practice, all the memories, all the hidden pain and joy she had kept locked away. Her heart and hands moved as one, telling a story that words could never express. By the time she finished, the room was completely silent. For a moment, no one breathed. The teachers exchanged stunned glances. The students whispered in amazement, their eyes wide with wonder. No one had imagined that this quiet, simple woman was a piano virtuoso. Lena sat back, her fingers still resting on the keys. She felt a strange mix of relief and fear. She had revealed a part of herself she had long kept hidden. And though the teachers didn't yet understand who she truly was, she knew that everything was about to change. The teacher, finally finding his voice, stammered, I didn't know. How? How did you? Lena shook her head slightly, smiling faintly. She had no answers for them, at least not yet. For now, she simply closed her eyes, letting the echo of the music fill the room one last time. She had played, and in doing so, she had reminded herself and everyone watching that talent and heart cannot be hidden forever. The room remained quiet, but a new energy had taken hold. The teachers were no longer frustrated. They were stunned and humbled. Lena, once overlooked and underestimated, had just turned their expectations completely upside down. And the story of the quiet woman with extraordinary skill was only beginning. The next day at the Community Learning Center, the air was thick with anticipation. Lena arrived as usual, quietly moving through the hallways, her bag over one shoulder, her steps measured and careful. But today felt different. Today she could feel eyes on her. Not just casual glances, but curious, questioning looks. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Some students nudged each other and whispered excitedly. A few teachers lingered near classrooms, stealing glances at her as she passed. Word had already begun to spread about what had happened in the music room the day before. Lena tried to ignore it. She walked straight to her classroom, keeping her gaze low and her face calm. She wanted to blend in, to be unnoticed, as she always had. But that was becoming increasingly difficult. Every step she took seemed to draw attention. Some students were clearly trying to catch a glimpse of her, whispering to each other and pointing discreetly in her direction. Lena felt a little exposed, a little uneasy, but she kept moving forward. The morning class began as usual, but Lena could not concentrate. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the piano, back to the sudden performance that had shocked everyone the day before. She could still feel the keys under her fingers, still hear the notes echoing in the room, still remember the quiet astonishment on the faces of the teachers. It was as if a door had been opened inside her, a door she thought she had locked for good. During the break, one of the teachers approached her. His expression was a mixture of awe and hesitation. "Lena," he said carefully, "would you maybe consider performing again? There's an upcoming event, and we think it would be incredible if you played." Lena looked at him quietly. She understood what he was asking, and a part of her recoiled. She had no intention of returning to that world of performance, of expectations, of scrutiny. She had chosen simplicity, silence, and ordinary life. She had escaped the pressures that had once consumed her. And yet, another part of her felt a strange tug. She could feel the music inside her stirring again, awakening after a long sleep. I don't know," she said softly. Her voice was steady, but inside, her heart was racing. She did not want to disappoint anyone, but she also did not want to return to the spotlight. The teacher smiled gently, sensing her hesitation. "No pressure. Just think about it. Even a small piece would be enough." He walked away, leaving Lena with her thoughts. After class, she wandered through the hallways, passing the music room once again. The piano sat there, silent and waiting, as if inviting her back. Her fingers twitched instinctively, yearning to touch the keys, to hear the sound that had once been her life. But she pulled her hands back. She had promised herself she would not go down that path again. She had promised herself she would remain ordinary. Later in the day, the teachers gathered in a small office, discussing the upcoming showcase. They were clearly excited, but also stressed. They needed a performer, and Lena's name had quickly risen to the top of their list. They whispered among themselves about how surprising it was that someone so quiet could possess such incredible skill. They joked quietly about how no one had expected her to play so well, and how her performance had completely stunned everyone. One of the teachers suggested, almost playfully, that they encourage Lena to perform something even more challenging. The others agreed, not realizing the weight of their suggestion. They saw her as a talented but unassuming student, someone who could add excitement to the event. They did not know her past, did not understand the depth of her training, or the years she had spent mastering her craft. To them, it was a harmless challenge, an opportunity to showcase someone's hidden talent. When Lena arrived for her next class, she was met with a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. Students whispered as she walked by, some shyly approaching her to ask about the piano, some openly staring. Lena kept her head down, offering polite smiles but saying little. She felt the pressure building, a tension that was almost tangible in the air. She had always avoided attention, yet now she was at the center of it. Whether she liked it or not, the teacher of the music room approached her again, holding a sheet of paper with a complicated classical piece written across it. "We thought maybe you could try this one," he said, his voice tentative. "It's very difficult, I know, but we believe you can do it." Lena's eyes widened slightly as she looked at the sheet. Her first instinct was to refuse, to walk away, to ignore the request. But as she stared at the notes, she felt a strange familiarity. Her fingers itched to move, to bring the music to life. She recognized the piece instantly. It was complex, challenging even for highly trained musicians. It required precision, control, and emotion. And yet, she knew she could play it. Her mind raced. She had not touched a piano in years, not since she had left that life behind. Could she still do it? Could she perform without losing control, without letting the past overwhelm her? She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She wanted to refuse, to retreat, to remain invisible. But the pull of the music, the deep connection she had once felt, was too strong to ignore. I'll try," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. The teacher's eyes lit up with excitement, though he did not fully understand the courage it had taken her to agree. The room was set up for practice. Chairs were arranged, and a small group of students gathered, curious to watch. The piano sat in the center, waiting like a silent sentinel. Lena approached it slowly, her heart pounding. She sat down, placed her hands on the keys, and paused for a moment. She closed her eyes and let the silence fill her. She could feel the tension, the expectation, the nervous anticipation of everyone watching. And then she let her fingers move. The first notes were soft, tentative, as if testing the ground. But almost immediately, they grew stronger, more confident. Lena's fingers danced across the keys, each note precise, each movement graceful and controlled. The room fell silent, the students and teachers holding their breath. None of them had ever heard anything like this. The music flowed effortlessly, carrying emotion, skill, and passion in a way that left everyone in awe. As she played, Lena felt herself transported back to those years of rigorous training, the countless hours of practice, the sacrifices she had made. She felt the joy, the pain, the discipline, the triumphs. And yet, she also felt freedom. In this moment, She was not performing for approval, not showing off, not proving anything. She was simply playing, allowing the music to flow through her as it always had. The students watched in silence, mesmerized. Their eyes were wide, their whispers gone. They had expected a simple demonstration, perhaps a few clumsy notes, but what they were witnessing was far beyond anything they could have imagined. Lena was not just good. She was extraordinary. The teachers, too, were stunned. They had never seen anyone play like this before. Their plan to showcase a hidden talent had completely exceeded their expectations. They exchanged glances, speechless and unsure how to respond. Lena, the quiet, ordinary woman they had assumed knew nothing about music, was revealing a mastery they could hardly comprehend. When she finished, the room remained silent for a few moments. The weight of the performance hung in the air, heavy and profound. Lena's fingers rested on the keys, her breathing steadying, her heart still racing. She opened her eyes slowly, looking at the faces around her. There was awe, surprise, admiration. Some students even looked a little afraid, unsure how to process what they had just witnessed. The teacher finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly. I didn't know. How? How did you? Lena smiled faintly, a small, calm expression. She shook her head slightly, as if to say there were no words to explain. She had played because she had to, because the music was part of her, because it had never truly left her. She did not need to prove anything to anyone. The room, however, had already been transformed by her performance. The news of her talent spread quickly through the center. Students whispered in hallways, teachers spoke in hushed tones in offices, and even visitors who happened to be passing by caught glimpses of the story. Lena's life, once quiet and ordinary, was beginning to change. The simple, unassuming woman who had walked in unnoticed was now at the center of attention. Though she still moved through the world with the same quiet grace, that evening, Lena walked home slowly, her mind still replaying the day's events. She felt a mixture of relief, fear, and a strange exhilaration. She had faced the piano again, allowed herself to play, and revealed a part of herself she had long hidden. And though she had no desire to step fully back into that world, she could not deny the pull, the connection, the life that still lived inside her fingers. For the first time in years, Lena realized that the world she had tried to leave behind was not entirely gone. It had waited patiently, hidden in the quiet corners of her heart, ready to return when she was ready. And though she did not yet know what the future held, she understood one thing clearly. Her talent, her passion, her gift could no longer remain buried. The day of the showcase arrived, and the Community Learning Center was alive with excitement. The hallways buzzed with the chatter of students, teachers, and a few visitors who had come to see the performances. The air was filled with the faint smell of polished floors, pencils, and freshly brewed coffee from the small break area. Lena walked through the center, her bag slung over one shoulder, her hands clasped in front of her. She kept her gaze low, moving quietly, but she could feel the curious eyes following her as she passed. Everyone seemed to know her name now, whispered about her talent, and speculated about what she would do today. Lena felt a strange mix of emotions. She was nervous, of course. Her fingers twitched, remembering the keys, the music that was waiting for her. She was also cautious, not wanting to step too far back into a world she had left behind. And yet, deep down, there was a small spark of excitement. The piano had always been a part of her, and now, after all these years, she could feel it calling her again. The hall was set up for the showcase. Chairs were arranged neatly in rows, facing the stage area where the piano sat under a single soft light. A few decorations made the space feel festive, but nothing extravagant. Students fidgeted in their seats, whispering and glancing toward the piano. Teachers moved around, making last-minute checks, adjusting music stands, and giving instructions. Everyone seemed tense, but the tension was mixed with anticipation, curiosity, and excitement. Lena waited backstage, sitting quietly on a small bench. She kept her hands folded in her lap, feeling the familiar ache of nerves mixed with the thrill of possibility. The first performers went on, small presentations, short songs, and readings. Each was met with polite applause, some smiles, and quiet murmurs. Lena watched from the side, her mind drifting to the piano, imagining the keys under her fingers, the music filling the room, the sound carrying across the audience. Finally, it was her turn. A teacher approached her, whispering encouragement. "Just play naturally. The audience will be amazed." Lena nodded, but her heart raced. She walked toward the piano, the soft carpet beneath her feet seeming to guide her forward. She could hear the faint rustle of chairs as the audience shifted, the murmurs of students, the quiet exclamations of curiosity. As she reached the piano, Lena paused for a moment. She ran her fingers lightly across the keys, feeling the smooth surface, the weight, the promise of music waiting to be released. She closed her eyes for a second, taking a deep breath, letting the sounds of the room fade into silence in her mind. She was not performing for approval or applause. She was playing because it was part of her, because it had always been part of her, and because the music demanded it. When she pressed the first key, the sound filled the hall. It was clear, strong, and resonant, drawing every eye toward her. The audience fell silent. Even the teachers, who had seen her play before, stopped moving, their faces showing a mixture of awe and disbelief. Lena's fingers moved with precision and grace, dancing across the keys, bringing life to the notes in a way that seemed effortless yet filled with emotion. Each chord, each melody, carried a story, a depth that went beyond technical skill. It spoke of years of dedication, of struggle, of moments both joyful and painful. As she played, Lena felt herself become fully immersed in the music. The world outside disappeared. She could hear only the piano, the flow of the notes, the way each sound connected to the next. She remembered long nights of practice, the countless hours spent mastering pieces that had seemed impossible at first. She remembered the applause, the recognition, the thrill of performing, but also the loneliness and pressure that had come with it. And now she was here, playing not for anyone else, but for herself and for the moment. The audience was captivated. Students sat forward in their seats, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Teachers exchanged glances, unable to believe what they were hearing. Even those who had doubted her, who had thought she was an ordinary, quiet woman with no extraordinary talent, were forced to acknowledge the truth. Lena was no ordinary woman. She was a virtuoso. As the piece continued, Lena's emotions flowed through the music. Each note carried a story. Each chord was filled with feeling. She was not just playing a piano piece. She was telling her life, her past, her struggles, and her triumphs. The audience could feel it. They were drawn in, held by the power of her performance. The room was completely silent, every ear attuned to the sound, every mind focused on the woman at the piano. The teachers had expected a simple performance, perhaps a few impressive notes, but this was beyond anything they could have imagined. The music was flawless, filled with technical mastery, yet full of soul. It was the kind of performance that lingered in the heart long after the last note had faded. The teachers felt a mixture of pride, guilt, and astonishment. They had underestimated her, judged her by her appearance and quiet nature, and they were completely humbled by what she could do. Lena's hands moved with confidence and grace, her fingers striking the keys with perfect timing. She was in complete control, yet completely free. She felt the music flow through her, as if it were a living thing, guiding her, lifting her, carrying her forward. She could feel the audience reacting in subtle ways, the quick intake of breath, the widening of eyes, the slight movements of heads in wonder. She did not need to see their faces. She could feel their presence, their attention, their awe. By the time she reached the final notes, the hall was completely still. Every person was holding their breath, as if not wanting to disturb the delicate moment. Lena struck the last chord, holding it slightly longer than usual, letting it resonate, filling the space with its warmth. Then she lifted her hands, letting them hover above the keys for a moment, as if reluctant to leave the music behind. The silence lingered for a heartbeat, and then it was broken by a soft, hesitant clap. One student, unable to contain themselves, started clapping, and it spread quickly through the room. The sound grew louder, more confident, until the entire audience was applauding, some standing, some wiping tears from their eyes, some simply staring in amazement. The teachers were clapping too, their faces filled with awe and newfound respect. Lena sat quietly, her hands resting gently on her lap. She allowed herself a small, calm smile. She had played. She had shared a part of herself she had kept hidden for years. And she had reminded everyone, including herself, that talent and passion cannot be hidden forever. After the applause died down, the lead teacher approached her, his voice filled with emotion. "Lena, that was incredible. I don't know what to say. You have completely amazed us all." Lena shook her head slightly, still smiling faintly. "I just played," she said softly. She did not need to explain more. The performance had spoken for her. The audience had seen her truth, her skill, her heart. Students and teachers alike came forward, congratulating her, asking questions, and expressing their amazement. Some wanted to know how she had learned to play. Some simply wanted to understand how someone so quiet and ordinary-looking could possess such extraordinary talent. Lena answered politely, carefully, revealing only what she felt comfortable sharing. She was still cautious, still protective of her past, but she also felt a sense of pride and freedom she had not felt in years. The event continued, but the energy had shifted. Everyone was aware, now that Lena was special, that she was different. She had transformed the showcase with her performance. It was no longer a simple event for students to display basic skills. It had become a moment of inspiration, a demonstration of what dedication, talent, and passion could create. As the day ended and Lena walked home, she felt a lightness she had not known for a long time. She had faced the piano again, and she had emerged stronger. She had shared her gift, her story, her heart, without fear. And though she did not know what the future held, she understood that she could no longer hide from her talent. She had played, and in doing so, she had reclaimed a part of herself she had once thought lost forever. For the first time in many years, Lena felt a sense of possibility. The music was still inside her, waiting, ready to grow, ready to live again. And she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning of a journey she had once abandoned, a journey that would now shape her life in ways she could never have imagined. The days after the showcase were filled with whispers, curiosity, and a quiet excitement that followed Lena wherever she went. She walked through the community learning center, her presence now met with a mixture of awe, respect, and cautious admiration. Students stopped to smile at her. Teachers lingered in hallways to offer polite greetings. And even visitors seemed to notice the quiet, ordinary woman who had stunned them all with her extraordinary performance. Despite the attention, Lena continued to move through the world quietly. She did not seek praise or recognition. She had never been comfortable in the spotlight, and she had no desire to be the center of attention. Yet, the reality was unavoidable. People wanted to know more about her, to understand how someone so simple-looking could possess such incredible skill. Every day, someone would ask a question, offer a compliment, or try to draw her into conversation about the piano. Lena responded politely, carefully, giving only as much as she felt comfortable sharing, never revealing the full depth of her past. One afternoon, after a class had ended, a teacher approached her with a small smile and a folder in hand. "Lena," he said softly, "would you be willing to talk to me for a few minutes? I have to know more about your story. Everyone is amazed, and I think it would be helpful for our students to hear about your experience." Lena looked at him, her hands folded lightly in front of her. She hesitated. Sharing her story meant opening a door she had long kept closed. It meant speaking about years she had tried to leave behind, about sacrifices, struggles, and moments she had buried deep inside her heart. But she also realized that hiding it completely no longer felt right. The music had spoken for her, and now it was time for words to follow. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll talk." They sat in a quiet corner of the center, away from the busy hallways. The teacher listened patiently as Lena began to speak, her voice soft, steady, and calm. She told him about her early life, about how she had discovered the piano at a young age and fallen in love with the instrument. She described the long hours of practice, the discipline required, and the sacrifices she had made to master her craft. She spoke of her successes, the competitions she had won, the teachers who had guided her, and the moments of triumph that had filled her with pride. But Lena did not stop there. She also spoke of the reasons she had left that world behind. She talked about the pressure, the constant expectations, the loneliness that came with pursuing perfection. She spoke of the financial struggles, the personal losses, and the heartbreak that had pushed her away from the life she had once known. She admitted that walking away had been one of the hardest decisions of her life, but also one that had allowed her to find peace and simplicity. The teacher listened silently, absorbing every word. He could see the depth of her experience, the resilience it had taken to live through those years, and the quiet strength that had allowed her to survive and thrive in a world far removed from the piano. He realized that Lena's talent was not just about skill, it was about character, determination, and a lifetime of dedication. "Thank you for sharing that with me," he said finally, his voice filled with sincerity. "I had no idea. I can't imagine what you went through, and yet here you are. Your story. It's incredible. It's inspiring." Lena nodded, a small smile touching her lips. She felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Speaking her truth, even in part, had been liberating. She had shared her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. And in doing so, she had allowed others to see not just her talent, but her humanity. Word of Lena's story began to spread quietly through the center. Students who had once whispered about her talent now listened in admiration as she shared her experience. Teachers approached her with newfound respect, asking questions, seeking guidance, and expressing gratitude for the honesty and vulnerability she had shown. Even those who had initially doubted her, who had assumed she was ordinary and unskilled, now looked at her with a mixture of awe and humility. Despite the attention and admiration, Lena remained grounded. She continued her classes, helping quietly when she could, offering support to students who were struggling and encouraging others to find their own talents. She did not seek recognition or praise. She had learned long ago that true fulfillment came not from applause, but from doing what was right, from living authentically, and from honoring her own abilities. One day, after a particularly busy class, a group of students approached her. They were nervous, unsure of how to speak, but eager to learn from her. "Lena," one of them said softly, We heard your story. We wanted to ask, how did you stay motivated? How did you keep going, even when things were so hard?" Lena looked at them, her eyes calm and steady. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I didn't always stay motivated," she admitted honestly. There were times I wanted to give up, times I felt like it was too much. But I loved the music, and I couldn't let that go. Even when life was difficult, I kept playing, even if no one was watching. I kept learning, even if no one noticed. And when you love something deeply, it gives you strength you didn't know you had. The students listened intently, absorbing her words. They could see the truth in her eyes, the quiet determination that had carried her through years of struggle. Her story was no longer just about talent, it was about resilience, courage, and the power of following one's passion. Even in the face of hardship, as the days passed, Lena began to feel a shift within herself. Sharing her story, performing again, and interacting with the students had rekindled a spark she had long thought extinguished. She began to consider the possibility of embracing her talent more fully, of allowing music to become a part of her life once again, not as a source of pressure, but as a source of joy and fulfillment. One afternoon, a teacher approached her with a suggestion. "Lena, we were thinking, maybe you could lead a small workshop for students. Teach them a bit about technique, about expression, about the music itself. We would love for you to share more of your experience with them." Lena hesitated. The idea of teaching, of guiding others, was both exciting and frightening. She had spent so many years away from that world that she wasn't sure if she was ready to step back in. And yet, there was a part of her that longed to share her knowledge, to help others find their own paths, to inspire students the way she had once been inspired. After a moment of thought, she nodded. I think I can do that," she said quietly. The teacher's face lit up with gratitude and excitement. "Thank you, Lena. This means a lot, not just to us, but to the students. You have so much to offer." The workshop was scheduled for the following week. Lena spent time preparing, carefully planning what she would teach, thinking about how to share her experience in a way that was both accessible and inspiring. She focused on the basics, on helping students feel comfortable and confident, and on showing them that music was about expression, not perfection. When the day arrived, Lena stood before a group of students, her hands resting lightly on the piano keys. She spoke softly, calmly, sharing her story, her journey, and her love for music. She demonstrated techniques, explained the importance of practice, and encouraged students to explore their own creativity. Her presence was gentle yet commanding, her words filled with wisdom and warmth. The students responded eagerly, asking questions, trying out the techniques she demonstrated, and listening intently to her guidance. Lena felt a sense of fulfillment she had not experienced in years. She was no longer just performing for herself or for others. She was helping others discover the power of music, the joy of learning, and the confidence that comes from pursuing one's passion. After the workshop, a teacher approached her quietly. "Lena, that was remarkable. You've not only shown everyone your talent, but you've inspired them. You've reminded us all of the importance of dedication, humility, and sharing what we love." Lena smiled softly. "I'm just glad I could help," she said. "Music has given me so much. If I can pass even a little of that on, it's worth it." In the days that followed, Lena continued to teach, perform, and interact with the students. She remained humble, quiet, and grounded, but she also began to embrace her talent more fully. She realized that her past, her struggles, and her skills were not something to hide. They were a part of her, and they could inspire others in ways she had never imagined. Lena's story became a quiet legend at the Learning Center. Students spoke of her with admiration, teachers respected her with awe, and visitors left with a sense of inspiration that lingered long after they departed. She had transformed the center, not just with her talent, but with her courage, her humility, and her willingness to share herself with others. And through it all, Lena remained herself quiet, simple, and unassuming. yet extraordinary in every way that truly mattered. She had faced the world again, embraced her gift, and in doing so, had discovered that her music was not just a talent, but a bridge to connection, inspiration, and the fulfillment of her own heart. She knew now that the piano would never be just an instrument to her again. It was a part of her life, a part of her identity, and a part of the legacy she could share with the world. And for the first time in years, Lena felt truly at peace, knowing that she had not only reclaimed her own passion, but had also ignited it in others. The weeks following the workshop became a turning point in Lena's life. The quiet community learning center that she had once walked through unnoticed now felt like a space alive with possibility and connection. Students approached her not only for guidance in music, but also for encouragement in other areas of their lives. Teachers began to see her not just as a skilled pianist, but as a mentor, someone who carried a depth of experience and wisdom that inspired. Everyone she met, despite the attention and newfound respect, Lena remained herself. She walked through the hallways with her usual quiet grace, her movements measured and calm. She did not seek recognition, and she did not flaunt her skill. But the change within her was undeniable. There was a lightness to her step, a subtle confidence in her posture, and a quiet joy that radiated from her whenever she approached the piano. She had learned to embrace her talent without letting it define her entirely, to share it without expecting applause, and to live in the moment of creation rather than the outcome. One morning, as she arrived for her regular class, a small group of students approached her, holding sheet music and looking both nervous and excited. "Lena," one said softly, "we were wondering if you could help us prepare for a small recital we're organizing. We'd like you to guide us." Lena looked at them, her expression gentle but thoughtful. She nodded slowly. "I can help," she said quietly. "But remember, it's not about perfection. It's about expressing yourselves through music. That is what matters most." The students' faces brightened. They followed her into the music room, where the piano sat waiting like an old friend. Lena began by guiding them through basic techniques, demonstrating fingering, timing, and expression. She encouraged them to feel the music, to let it speak through them, and to enjoy the act of playing rather than worrying about mistakes. As the session continued, Lena observed each student carefully, offering gentle corrections and praise. She noticed their unique strengths and weaknesses, their hesitations and bursts of confidence. She adapted her guidance to each of them, ensuring that they felt supported and capable. The students responded eagerly, their nervousness giving way to excitement and engagement. For Lena, the experience was deeply fulfilling. She realized that sharing her knowledge and passion was not only helping others, but also reconnecting her with the pure joy of music that she had once feared lost. Word of Lena's involvement with the students began to spread further throughout the center. Teachers praised her dedication, students spoke of her patience and skill, and visitors commented on the calm yet inspiring presence she brought to the space. Lena's reputation as both a musician and a mentor grew, but she handled it with humility, never allowing it to overshadow the simple life she had chosen for herself. She had learned that true influence came not from attention or acclaim, but from the quiet, consistent impact she had on those around her. One afternoon, after a long session with students, Lena sat alone at the piano, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys, and she allowed herself to play a few notes just for herself. The music flowed effortlessly, carrying with it memories of past performances, struggles overcome, and the resilience that had guided her through years of challenges. She realized that she had come full circle, not returning to the world of competition and pressure, but reclaiming her connection to music in a way that was authentic, joyful, and sustaining. As she played, the door opened quietly, and a fellow teacher stepped in. He watched silently for a few moments, captivated by the grace and emotion in Lena's playing. "Lena," he said softly when she paused, "you've done something remarkable here. Not just with your music, but with your presence, your guidance, your example. You've changed the center. You've inspired people in ways that can't always be measured." Lena smiled faintly. "I just do what I can," she said quietly. "I'm glad it helps." The teacher nodded, understanding the depth of her humility. "It's more than that," he said. "You've reminded everyone that talent isn't just about skill. It's about heart, perseverance, and the willingness to share what you love. That's what makes you extraordinary." Over the next few weeks, Lena continued to balance her quiet life with her growing role at the center. She guided students, helped with performances, and occasionally performed herself, always with the same calm presence that had defined her from the beginning. The piano became a bridge connecting her past with her present, her talent with her purpose, and herself with the community around her. One evening, after a particularly inspiring session, Lena walked home slowly through the quiet streets. The air was cool, and the setting sun cast long shadows across the pavement. She reflected on the unexpected path her life had taken, from quiet avoidance and hidden talent to recognition, influence, and fulfillment. She understood that the music had never left her, that her skills had been waiting for the right moment to reemerge, and that her journey had only begun. At home, Lena sat by her window, watching the sky darken and the stars emerge. She thought about the students she had guided, the teachers she had inspired, and the small but meaningful ways she had impacted the community. She realized that her life had been transformed not by seeking attention or acclaim, but by embracing her own abilities and sharing them with care, humility, and authenticity. In the weeks that followed, the community center organized another showcase, this time including performances from many students Lena had guided. She played briefly, not to impress, but to demonstrate, to encourage, and to remind the students of the power and beauty of music. Each note she struck carried encouragement, patience, and love for the craft. The students followed her lead, performing with confidence, expression, and pride. The audience was captivated, not only by Lena's skill, but also by the transformation in the young performers who had once been hesitant and unsure. After the event, one of the students approached Lena quietly, eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," they said softly. "Because of you, I believe I can do this. I believe I can play, really play, and enjoy it." Lena placed a gentle hand on their shoulder. "You had it in you all along," she said. "I only helped you see it. Never forget that the music comes from you. It's your voice, your heart, your story." The student nodded, a smile spreading across their face, and Lena felt a warmth inside her that she had not experienced in years. She understood then that her gift was more than her own talent. It was the ability to inspire, to guide, and to open doors for others. Music had returned to her life, not as a burden or expectation, but as a source of joy, connection, and purpose. As the weeks turned into months, Lena continued her quiet work at the center, never seeking fame or recognition, but steadily influencing the lives around her. She taught, guided, performed occasionally, and inspired countless students. And while her life remained simple and grounded, it was also deeply fulfilling. The piano, once a source of pressure and solitude, had become a bridge to connection, creativity, and meaning. Lena understood that the path she had chosen, balancing her talent with humility, sharing her skill without seeking acclaim, living authentically while helping others, was the true measure of success. She had reclaimed her music, her voice, and her identity, and in doing so, had created a life of purpose, joy, and quiet brilliance, even as she moved through the world with her usual calm and simplicity. Those who encountered her could sense something extraordinary, a presence that was both gentle and powerful, quiet yet transformative. Lena had become more than a musician. She was a guide, a mentor, an inspiration, and a living reminder that true talent shines brightest when paired with humility, courage, and heart. And so Lena's story continued, unfolding day by day, note by note. She had faced her fears, embraced her gift, and shared it with the world in a way that was authentic, meaningful, and profoundly human. In the music, in the teaching, and in the quiet moments of reflection, she found fulfillment, connection, and joy. She had discovered that the piano was not just an instrument. It was a pathway to purpose, a voice for the heart, and a bridge between who she had been, who she was, and who she was becoming. Lena's journey, once hidden and solitary, had blossomed into a life that touched the lives of many. She had transformed not only her own existence, but also the community around her. And through it all, she remained the same quiet, thoughtful woman whose extraordinary gift had finally found the place it belonged, not in applause or recognition, but in the hearts and lives she had touched, and in the music that would continue to flow through her for years to come.